some priming, safety squints. I use the Sinclair hand primer. It gives me a lot of feel. I can adjust it so that when I close it completely, it seats every one to the same depth. I've uniformed all the pockets, so each one should go to the same depth. I happen to have 20 cases there, and I usually use an empty. The back side to drop 20 in. These are the BR2, and you usually can shake them about, get them right side up, and drop one in. I raise the lever a little bit just to get it to set flat. Go the right way might help. And drive it home. And the idea, of course, if you've done it right, you don't want the case to protrude above the top at all. A lot of times I'll set them on the table, and if they settle down quickly, you'll know that the case is not, or the primer is not protruding. I'll show you one that if done incorrectly, does not want to set on the table. I may have driven that one home. Yeah, it looks like I'll have to try it on the next one. Some say that your finger oil will contaminate them. Some say they won't. I try not to. Now that one is not set in there far enough. If you set it, it wants to just wobble around. You know for sure that one's not driven home. I'm weight sorting the bullets. These are the Berger 7mm 195 grain Elite Hunters. I basically have 4 piles. The ideal pile is the equals to pile, which should equal 195 grains. The last lot that I had, majority of them actually did equal what the size was on the box, 195. The other piles, we have a minus pile, which ideally would only be 1/10 under, but depending on how it starts to go, I will sometimes put up to 2/10 under, so 194.8 or 194.9. If they're over 195, like 195.1 or 195.2, and if they fall outside of that range, they go into the way off container. And the way off would get used for, I would load these into, because I'm going to weight sort the brass also, and if I have some outside anomalies in the brass, that's out of the majority, I'll load the way off ones in there and use those for cold bore shots, well, after cleaning, cold bore on steel, or just as I call it, plinking around. We'll use those up on those. Unless there's one that's just way ridiculously off, they hardly ever go in the trash. But to make sure my scale is good, I'll take my standards, and I'll pick a standard that's close to the weight that I'm using, which 195 is close to the 200 grain. I try to make sure my hands are clean, so I'm not introducing some oil, which would then equal weight to the scale. So this is a 200 grain, so the scales are calibrated and zeroed empty, so they are weighing 200. And I'll take each bullet and gently set it on the scale. But here's one that actually weighs 195 grains exactly. It goes into the equals to pile. 194.8. That's within 2/10 low. 194.9. But you can see that they're favoring the this lot is favoring just slightly light. The last lot that I did actually favored pretty much right in the middle. And I'll go through all of them and weight sort them all. And that's the majority. I'll pick this pile it looks like it's going to be. These will go into the brass that is the most desirable and should achieve the most consistent shots. If I start to have a string of brass that's not quite in the right spot, it's not favoring directly in the center of the lot, I may arrange them from high to low or low to high, and that way when I'm shooting them, if I start to notice some deviation, it should trend in the same direction, and I can adjust for that. Instead of just having random, shot a little high, a little low, or at least they'll start to progressively either go slightly high, or the velocities will change in the same direction. But most of the brass seems to be pretty good. But this is bullet weight sorting. You can also even get, I don't use this very often. I find that it just doesn't seem to make any sense, but you can check each bullet and compare from the ogive to the base. Now this one here is a 168 grain, but and you'll surely want to make sure you keep those separate so you don't mix those up, but you can check the length of each one. This is a 7mm die or holder. This one here, incidentally, the way it's set now is sitting right on 70. And this one here is 68.5. But you can go through all of that, but in 70. I think if I was shooting a match or something, I possibly would add this step to it. I don't find that there's a huge variation. Also, I don't seat my bullets into the rifling lands, so it's not like I'm getting a slightly different pressure, shot start pressure, due to how much we're jammed into the lands. So I don't think this is helping me at all because of how I seat my bullets off of the lands. But it is something you can add to your regiment. To seat the bullets, I take pictures of things so I can remember exactly how it was set. But I have dies for each one, and I've got them locked, and I try to avoid at all costs moving them because they're difficult to get exactly back where you had them. But this one's for the 7mm, or the Model 7mm short action Ultra Mag. Loading a few cases, looks like 20. I've got the Charge Master set up to dispense 59.5 grains of Hodgins H4831 shortcut. And the die is set. Yes, it is on 120. They are primed, and I've programmed it already, and I'm going to have it dispense. I usually have a little over here on the side in case I don't usually ever have to add any, but you can see it over dispensed just by a shade. I'll use these to grab a couple kernels. And if I'm really finicky, which I pretty much usually am, I will verify on this scale. Well, I can't verify like that because I didn't zero my scale. I keep the scales in exactly the same spot, and I leave them on all the time so they're getting warmed up. Might help I put the right tray on the right one. We'll move that to the side so I don't. 59.4 right on the nose. And 59.4. I also have a set of standards that I'll use, and I did use them prior to throwing this charge. So the nice thing is I can tell it to dispense while I seat the bullet. Saves a little bit of time that way. These are the Berger Classic Hunters, 7mm, 168 grain. I'm going to wait until that does hit its mark, just so I'm not shaking the table. I mean, it's not going to shake it much, but why take a chance? You close the door so you're not breathing on it, because your breath will make the scale fluctuate, especially this one over here. And I'll run this up till it just touches a little bit, then I'll spin it 180 and drive it home gently, because the scale is measuring. And we overshot on that one. I hear that if you put a McDonald's straw inside the shaft there, it will help with a little more consistent metering. And I really usually don't like to have those over the top of where I might drop a grain in one, so I'm going to move it to the side. 94 point, or 90, 59.4. One thing I don't care for about this scale here is it does have a tendency to drift, but we'll zero the scale on the next one. You can see it drifted 0.6, 0.4, and now it's self-zeroed. Mm-hmm. 59.4, 59.42, and I think it took one kernel, which I did not get. I mean, that is getting a little anal, but on the other rifle I'll do that. But these will get checked for concentricity. We'll check the check the headspace on them. We'll run a few random rounds into the rifle to just make sure the bolt closes as expected. It should, but doesn't hurt to check. And these should fly very nicely. This should be well below a ½ inch MOA. Probably approaching ½ inch MOA. The last few that I shot last weekend were touching each other, so pretty close. That's I think that might be it. If not, you'll see me in another moment.